Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this week's episode of Ascend Live. I am so excited today because I have one of my oldest friends here with us, Sam Lee, who is going to be discussing the power of community with us today. I'm super excited and almost a little bit nervous because Sam is someone I've admired ever since we graduated from Penn. And having you on this show, Sam, is just a wonderful watershed moment. I can't wait to explore with you in this conversation. Everybody, as you know, Ascend is a show where we inspire marketers to become our highest professional selves with a focus on the particular challenges that women marketing leaders face. Today is the day after Equal Pay Day. It is Women's History Month. And it's so important for me to have amazing male allies like Sam in these discussions. So, Sam, it's just wonderful to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining.
Lola, thank you for having me. This is so fun.
Yay, awesome. And you've been watching the show and commenting every week. So super excited to have you on the other side of the camera here. And everyone, just as Sam does, feel free to jump in with your questions and comments. We'll address them as we go.
Absolutely.
So, yes, so exciting. Let's just get started because we have a lot to cover. So, Sam, let's start with your career journey. What lessons have you learned along the way that inspired you to sort of believe in this idea of community as a catalyst for greater independence and with that creating your company, IndeCollective? Tell us about the journey. Some folks watching may know that you were, before you went independent, at WeWork, and that must have been an amazing journey. Would just love to hear, your thoughts on what led you to this point.
Well, Lola, first, thank you for having me on the show today. I am an avid watcher. I am catching up every week on what you and your guests are speaking about. So it's fun to be, as you said, on the other side of the camera. You're somebody that's inspired me since Penn. And as I shared with you a few months ago when we were catching up, I really have found in the last year of watching you very closely that I feel you're living more in your mission and superpowers than ever. And that's been really exciting to see from the other side of the camera. So congrats on that.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. It's been a journey. And honestly, the work you're doing, if I had that as a resource earlier on, it may not have taken quite as long, but it's just so nice to hear you say that. Thank you.
We live and learn, and we live hopefully and learn inside of a great community. So I think the key lessons that I've learned in my career, right, which has spanned 4 industries, has spanned a variety of different roles, has been first and foremost about knowing your mission and superpowers and leaning into them, right? So that's why you really inspired me in the last year. It's clear that you know your mission and superpowers. And when you build your business and your life around those things, you just can't go wrong. Life is a rising of abundance, right? So when I think about my life and when I think about, the moments where I felt the most successful, it's because I've really dialed into opportunities that align to my mission, which I've known for more than 10 years now is about helping myself and others to identify a passion and unleash their potential. And when you are doing that mission of yours and leveraging your superpowers, you become the difference maker, right? For me, the difference maker in helping people identify that passion, unleash their potential, and in leveling up in my own reach and impact. So I'd say those are the 2 most important lessons. And I built IndeCollective because when I was leaving the full-time, corporate or startup swim lane, I realized that while I did have a sellable skill set, go-to-market strategy, product development, team building, things that I'd done at multiple different companies across multiple industries, I didn't necessarily know how to build the consulting book and business. And I realized that just like at every other stage of my career, there was so much to learn from smart peers, right? Practitioners who were near ahead and sometimes far ahead mentors who could help me to figure out that bigger vision for the business that I wanted to build, the life that I wanted to build, but then also shortcut to some of the right next steps so that I could build momentum and gain traction and not just delivering the work, but doing the book and business side of it, the things that make for a really, vibrant business and successful life. So IndeCollective, I like to refer to it as the modern MBA for the modern worker. It's 1 part education,
love it,
It's one part mentorship from mentors who've done it. It's one part supportive community, so that you're supported by people who are in it alongside you and who are asking the same tough questions and are trying to make better decisions and build better, more fulfilling businesses.
It's such an awesome thing that you've tapped into, Sam, because honestly, as someone who's an MBA grad myself, I had an amazing experience at NYU Stern. So much of what we learned was about how to function in a corporate setting. And even with my specialization in entrepreneurship, I learned a lot, but it's like until you really get your hands dirty, and as a service provider, it's a whole different thing than like the sort of lean startup, build a product, have a scalable business model approach to entrepreneurship. So what you're doing is really teaching people who are, living their passion in their independent practice, how to sort of sell that passion. And I think that's so exciting. So let's talk about this community element of it, because I think that's part of what makes what you're doing really unique and also tied to so many of your past experiences. Just unpack that idea for everyone listening. What do we mean when we say community is a catalyst to greater independence?
Absolutely. So I'd say I've been a student of community building for many years now. It started when I was in high school and came out of the closet and realized that when I found my own voice, I wanted to help others find their voice, and I wanted to be surrounded by like-minded peers, whether they were allies or others who were finding themselves. And that was.
And can I just say, Sam, sorry to cut in, but honestly, so I'll take everyone back to the moment where we actually met, which was doing oceanography to get our science, whatever, you had to take a science class. So we took that one. Just goes to show how much you and I are actually interested in science, but it was fun. But I was always so impressed and energized by just your sense of self, even at that young age. So hearing that story, that your sort of approach to building community started with that experience of living in your full truth, it makes so much sense to me. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, the word belonging has, I think, been my favorite word for a long time, even before I knew the word, right? So the word came into focus for me when I was reading one and then all of Brene Brown's books, right? Famed author, social psychologist. And she talks a lot about loneliness, right? Which is something that has been on the rise for decades, but has come to a fever pitch against the backdrop of COVID. But the opposite of loneliness is belonging, right? And she talks about it as a two-sided coin. There's belonging to yourself, which means knowing your mission, knowing your values, knowing the superpowers that we just talked about. And then that expands into belonging to others, right? Finding your tribe. So
I love that.
Left WeWork, which was no question, 4 of my favorite years professionally. I was committed to going independent, but not doing it alone, right? My headline for the beginning of 2020 was me telling myself independence doesn't have to come at the cost of community. So how am I going to for myself and others try to unlock those opportunities to more meaningfully connect, to build business, obviously, but more importantly, to build life, because we're in the independent swim lane because we're looking to really maximize our living, our lifestyle, our loving, all aspects of our life. So
wait a minute. That was great. What was that? Living, lifestyle, and loving?
Yes. And we can big time double click on that. That's where we actually start IndeCollective, designing for independence. It's about setting your bigger vision, your goals around your living, lifestyle, and loving. Because, having talked to almost 500 independent workers in the last year, everyone's got a different reason for charting this course. But ultimately, we want to be balanced, right? We want to achieve more in each of these categories, prioritizing things at different stages, right? So anyway, community was going to be the bedrock of that for me. And where it started personally was in January of 2020, when I was embarking on this path, reaching out to folks in my network who had already built meaningful independent businesses, right? As solo practice or as agencies, and asking for them to mentor me. And as I had more and more of these mentoring conversations, fast forward to the end of February, I said, hey folks, a couple of us are really enjoying these one-to-ones. Let's thread this together. Let's build an A-team, a personal advisory board where we can be meeting. It started every other week, then it turned into a weekly cadence where we were just asking our tough questions, getting actionable feedback. And then week over week, right, as we were meeting, we found ourselves holding each other accountable to this bigger vision, bigger goals that we were setting, and helping each other to troubleshoot because things don't always work out as planned. And that A team,
that's the truth.
Yeah, right. They never work out as planned, but that's the beauty of life, and that's where we actually, you know, find a richer experience and achieving things that we didn't think were even possible because they weren't in our plan. So anyway, fast forward a year later, I probably met with my A team 40 times, right, out of 52 weeks last year. And, you know, financially, I'd attribute half of the income I made last year to that A team, right? They helped me to set the bigger vision. They helped me to productize myself. They helped me to negotiate some of the tough contracts that I didn't know how to wrap my arms around. We ended up doing some work together too. So financially, it was a real catalyst, but just interpersonally and from a perspective, not going alone and having really smart people alongside me made all the difference in the world. So I'd say community, you know, independence doesn't have to come at the cost of community. I know that to be true in my own experience. And IndeCollective is built on the back of that A team model, plus mentors, plus education, wrapped in a cohort-based experience so that you are really thriving and building alongside a really exceptional group of people.
I mean, I love it. And I have to say, full disclosure, everyone, I'm super excited to participate in the next cohort. I mean, I'm so glad we're having this discussion, Sam, because even in my own journey and kind of what led me to want to create Ascend, this community for women marketers, where we're aspiring to do some of the same things for people in the corporate setting, I have learned how easy it is to ignore the need for community. We are tribal people, but for some reason, we have this disconnect with wanting to be vulnerable enough to accept and ask for help. Yeah. But once we're in the moment, it's like going to the gym. It's like once you're there, you're like, oh, this is amazing. Like, how could I live without this? This is amazing, you know? Totally. But, you know, I do want to kind of unpack your opinion. Let's go there, and then I'll go to the next official question. Why do you think we struggle with this so much?
You know, at the end of the day, vulnerability, that's one of the things that Brene talks about a lot in her research and books, is the thing that we fear most, right? We don't want to open up. One of my favorite mentors, friends, she was actually one of our expert guides for IndeCollective, you know, members last fall, is Sanyin Sung. She's, you know, one of the most humble people you've ever met. She's also the #1 CEO coach in the world, right? So that's a small title. And when she was speaking to our members last quarter about their bulletproof psychology, right? Developing the right psychology framework to be more successful, fulfilled, and abundant in your independence, she made a really important point, and it was around mentoring, right? She's a mentor to many. She's been mentored by many greats. And she says, don't make the mistake of being vulnerable, right, when you're speaking to people, because people naturally want to help, right? It's in our DNA to want to help. So if you only present the good and you don't lean into the bad and the ugly, you don't give people the opportunity to help you, right? Everything looks great. Everything looks rosy. How could I possibly help this person? They're thriving already, right? So when you get real with people, when you open up about the questions, the challenges, you know, you give people the hooks. You know, what I will say about looking for mentors and accessing those right people is that you need to be smart about it, right? You need to approach people in the right context with the right questions in the right format so that they can help you. Not everybody can help you with every question and every challenge, but when you're smart about it and you make it easy for people to help you, by God, they want to. That's just how we're made, right? We're tribal, as you said. We want to help people to succeed. So I think that's the #1 thing that I've found from working with many independents now and doing it in a cohort-based community format. It's that when you get clear about your vision, your goals, your points of leverage, when you identify the questions and the things that you need to tackle and you get open about it, by God, people come out of the woodworks to help you. And you get more vulnerable and it becomes a muscle you develop, right? It's not something that you fear.
Yes, it's a flywheel. So it's like getting over that fear the first time and having a forum that sort of both keeps you accountable, like you said, to doing that, and and shows you the immediate benefit of it, that's the inspiration. Amazing. I'm glad we talked about that because it does kind of lead in nicely to the next question. So let's get specific about the cohort coming up. I know there are probably a lot of people watching who might be interested. So tell us more. What is that going to look like? And selfishly, I'm excited to learn more about it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So every experience begins with what we call, our cohort-based program. We call it the Launch Pad. Is about launching you from where you are to your next level, right? And it's done over 10 weeks where you're accessing the modularized education, the far ahead mentors, and the peers who are going to help you to supercharge your journey. So that 10-week experience begins with what we call designing for independence, right? You need to make sure that your experience is personalized, even if you're doing it against the backdrop of great community. So in those 2 weeks, through 2 workshops led by this amazing guy, Dan Savage, who's worked with, a dozen Black CEOs, he's worked with veterans, he's worked with the executive team at LinkedIn. He helps people with life design, right? We call it designing for independence because when you embark on this independent journey or as you're building on it, you need to know your vision, your goals around your living, your lifestyle, your loving, what we call the 3 L's, right? So that when you're charting your course and within the context of a program, taking things off the menu, you do the right things at the right time, right? So those first 2 weeks, designing for independence, culminate with 3 points of leverage, 3 things that we help you identify that you're going to work on primarily in these 10 weeks so that you're guided to the right modules, the right mentors. And when you're working with your A team, your personal advisory board, you're focused on the right questions. And what we
Interesting. So it's kind of customized. It's not like one size fits all.
Yeah. I mean, there's a menu of resources, but we help you to customize it so that you're really focused on the right things to take you to your next level in 10 weeks. And it was pretty cool to see last fall, many of our members, achieve a 4 to 5x return on their investment in literally 10 weeks, right? It comes down to getting focused, right, on your vision and goals, and then accessing the right resources and putting them to work, right? I think I would never take credit for anybody else's results because it does come down to just doing the work. But too often, right, we don't have the resources, at our fingertips. And through this program, you do have those resources at your fingertips. And those that put them to work see great results.
I love that, Sam. And I mean, this isn't a really important point you just made in this sort of burgeoning. I think what we're seeing is a lot of exponential growth in the, coaching industry, the sort of, professional development, but sort of like self-led professional development tools. And there's so many options out there. But what I think people really need to look for is that very thing you just said, that like, these are your results. And this program is giving you a mechanism to create them, but it's not magical. It's not a cult. It's not some sort of like snap your fingers thing. It's about you being committed and having the space, to do the work at that time for you to get the real value out of it.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
I love it. So let's talk a little bit more about just like challenges from a leadership perspective. You've spoken with, you mentioned over 500, entrepreneurs in the last year. Over the years, many, many more, and you've done this cohort already. So what did you learn are some of the key challenges that people face on this journey of leveling up? And I think, I love your thoughts on kind of how the sort of independent minded folks who are looking to build their own thing and those who are in corporations, which you've also been, may struggle with some of the same things.
Absolutely. I actually think we can be really basic here. I'll start by saying the number one roadblock that each of us faces is ourselves, right? And that's not novel. You've heard that from many people, right? What I believe to my core, and I know it at least to be true in my experience, is that life is 80% psychology. That's to say what you believe about yourself, what you believe about your community and the world, that shapes your entire experience of life. Read the decisions you make and the outcomes you achieve, right? So those of us who seek to ascend, which is to say to grow personally and professionally, will find ourselves pushing the frontier of our careers, right? And psychologically, that can be scary, right? That is a scary place when you're constantly on the bleeding edge of change. So if you're planning to live on the frontier, let's get ready to tackle imposter syndrome, right? That's something that, again, probably almost everyone has heard about. If you haven't, Google it. But in essence, the imposter syndrome is that feeling that I'm not enough. I've gotten this far, but by God, someone's going to find me out because I couldn't possibly achieve that next level, that next frontier. I don't have the wherewithal. I don't have the stuff to do that. They're gonna realize I'm a phony, right? That's the imposter syndrome. And I'll say, that's something that I felt probably for the first time when I was in my late 20s. And I had pretty quickly ascended from individual contributor to manager of small teams. And then in the context of a corporate transformation in the internet industry, was catapulted into a P&L leadership and a P&L responsibility with a couple hundred employees, right? And this was over a matter of years. And I thought for sure, what is this board of directors? What is the CEO thinking, right? Like, how could I possibly know what to do at this juncture? I've certainly figured it out thus far, but this is where they'll find me out. This is where I'll fail. And just like anything else, you have to do the work, right? Once you have the self-awareness and you realize, my psychology isn't where it needs to be in order to be successful, you got to figure out how to correct course there. So for me, and I'm very open about this with those that I mentor and those that I speak to, I did cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Which is a proven technique to help you do when you identify the source of your problem, that limiting belief, rewire yourself, right? Put in place empowering belief so that you don't go down that chain reaction of negative belief, right? Emotion leads to thinking, right? Negative thinking leads to physical reaction, leads to fight or flight response, right? And that's the series of events that literally, let's say you're standing up for that big presentation, you're presenting your 300-person team, you're telling yourself, I'm not good enough. That leads to a physical response. You start flushing. That leads to loss of words. That leads to you fall apart in front of that audience, right? When you believe that that's going to happen to yourself, it's actually that one time out of 10 that you project in your mind to be the almost certain outcome, right? So the probability isn't there, but psychology makes our experience. So if you let your psychology, the wrong psychology, dominate you, the imposter syndrome get to you, it will undermine you. So that's the first thing. Psychology is life.
Yes.
So make sure you are self-aware. And if you have those limiting beliefs, identify them and then do the work, right? CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is a proven technique. It transformed for me public speaking into something that I feared in my mid-20s to something that I love, right? I love sharing thoughts. I love connecting with people in these types of format, whether it's one-to-one, one-to-several, one-to-many. So anyway, there's great work that we can do on psychology. I'd say the other piece that is so important is to surround yourself with mentors, right? We've already talked about this, but surround yourself with far ahead mentors, right? People who are on the frontier that you aspire to be at in years to come. And you know, right? They don't have to be people that you're meeting with weekly or even monthly, but follow them, right? Like I follow Lola. She's a mentor of mine in many ways. Listen to what they're saying, watch what they're doing. When you can get to connect with them and have the honest conversation about the challenges and the things where you're looking for help and advice, do that. But mentors, don't just help you to troubleshoot and take the right next step. They also help you to set the bigger vision, right? And to set a more expansive vision. The thing that I found through the independent workers that I work with through IndeCollective is that too many set their sights too low, right? They don't realize they could be doubling their income in 12 months. They don't realize that they could be balancing the work if they were to better administrate it and better, operationalize it through team and have more of a life, right? They just don't realize that big vision is possible. So surrounding yourself with people that have gotten there will inspire you to set your sights higher, and then will help you to operationalize your own plan to get there more quickly.
I think that's so important, Sam. And I mean, I got that value. Like, you are also a mentor of mine from our recent conversation. Just that idea of like, why not triple it? Why not quadruple it? Why not so much more? Like, there's never enough. And it's hard to have that perspective internally. But when someone, who you respect and who respects you can play that back to you, even if they know, I think this is the key thing, that it may not be what you want to hear. I think finding those mentors who are going to tell you the truth is super important, and avoiding, what often happens in these catch-up conversations. And I know people listening have done this. I've done it. It's sort of like, let's all talk about how awesome everything is for 30 minutes and then move on, instead of using it. I had a recent conversation with one of my bosses, Han Deline. I'll have to tag him so he sees this, who was one of my directors at Pepsi when I was just starting out, and we hadn't caught up in years. And we had this really intense, like, real talk conversation the other week, where I shared a lot that, felt uncomfortable, but afterward it was just having him be able to react to those scary things and sharing those vulnerable moments with his perspective, and then hearing his, which, you think some people don't have any. It was, so this is huge. And I hope people really take away that, like, there is nothing embarrassing about doing the work and getting the resources that you need. I'm taking that away from Sam. And it's something that I don't like doing. I don't like going into those vulnerable conversations from a therapy standpoint, but I know that it's necessary. So not all the pills are going to go down easy, but they transform you.
Right. That's so right.
Thank you so much, Sam. So let's get into, like, some actionable advice. I know this is the work we're going to do in the cohort, but when you think about getting unstuck from that moment of being alone, like we talked about, or sort of having an idea but not knowing how to execute it, what are some ways that people listening, even today, this week, in the month of April, what are some ways that people can get themselves out of that sort of, like, stuck mode?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I like to recommend is to look at your calendar, right? And to think about how you are applying your energy on the day, on the week, on the month, right? If you find that in your calendar, you don't have any time blocked, or just by nature of the show flow of the day, you don't have any time for expansive thinking, you're probably going to hit a wall, right? You should be giving yourself, I try to give myself at least an hour a day where I'm able to be thinking about the next frontier and doing the research and making the connections to help me to path toward that next frontier, right?
Yes.
If you're in a constant state of just responding, so taking orders and executing, you are going to feel under the water, right? You're going to feel under the water. So make sure you're leaving time in your calendar to think about the next frontier, and then to be searching for and connecting with and starting to consume some of those resources, right? Which is why really an hour a day is not enough time, but start with an hour a day, right? Everybody should be able to take.
And making it not passive. Yeah.
Correct. Everybody should be able to take an hour a day, right? So I think that's the starting place. And the thing I like about IndeCollective is that, or any program, right? Like whatever the program is, when you've got some structure, right? The cadence of the program, you've got a cohort. Those people are learning partners, but also accountability partners. You take the time to do that, right? And it starts with setting your vision, setting your goals, identifying 3 points of leverage, so that if I ask you, Lola, week 3 of the program, what are you focused on? Boom, you'll know it. You'll be able to, you'll be able to tell people with laser focus what that thing is. And then when you are thinking about that hour a day, you know how you'll be spending it, right? Because you're those tough questions, you're looking to the modularized education for those resources, you're reaching out to the mentors, you're, working with your peers to try to get to the next level. So I think taking the time every day is just so powerful. And then, I think when it comes down to trying to find the people that can help you, I like to go on LinkedIn and I like to, through people that I already know, and then also just through searching, identify people who have gotten to that next level, and really just walk back through their experience, right? See what I can find out before reaching out to them. What is it that you've done? How have you pathed to this destination? What might I learn from you? And then when I do reach out, I do ask for that coffee chat. I come with really smart questions, right? And that parlays into things that I'm researching, things that I'm thinking about in that hour I spend a day, right? So those are a few thoughts.
I love that. You mentioned before, and I totally believe in this. I mean, I'm sure you and I experience it too on the receiving end. A lot of people reach out some make it really easy to help because they have that easy, actionable, relevant, like you said on the research, question. What are some of the sorts of like things that you feel like are the, I mean, there's, you know, there's so many, but just an example of that easy seeking mentorship question, just so everyone listening has a good idea of how to approach this.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is easy for people to talk about? It's very easy for people to share their experience. So if you are doing your homework, you're doing your research on somebody on LinkedIn, you're looking to be able to nuggetize, right, in a very short outreach, that thing that stood out that they call out in the profile, right? If they're calling it out in their profile, it's something they want to talk about. It's something that they it's their persona around, right? So make a really actionable call out about, this experience and your contribution doing X, right? I'm looking to become insert this thing that you are and have been developing this muscle myself. Would you be open to a quick conversation? I'd love to hear how you got to that destination, right? Repeat back the language that they're using, because that will land.
Yes.
And then create space for them to storytell, right? You're not making any hard asks. You're not asking for an introduction. You're not asking for a job. You're asking for them to share their story. And that's something that people generally love the opportunity to do, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that just makes it easy, right? From there, I always come to every conversation with a clear ask, right? I'm not going to always make the ask if it doesn't feel appropriate, but I've thought through how somebody can help me, right? Because as I started with in the conversation, we're psychologically wired. It's in our DNA to want to help, right? So if you've thought about the person's profile, you understand what it is that you're trying to learn from them, and then you come with an ask, right? That's not hard, but that's clear and will actually advance the thing that you're trying to work on. You've done all the right things. And if you do that enough,
absolutely,
right? If you do that enough, you make a habit of doing this. I try to speak to 1 or 2 new people a day, right? So I make the time to do that.
Wow.
And that's in part because
awesome.
I'm building a community, right? So I know the profile of our member now, and I have a lead list builder, right? I have somebody that's building lists for me. And I'm doing the outreach, in a personalized way at scale, so that I can get in front of more people. And not everybody's interested in speaking, right? People are busy, but if you kind of build the machine, right, in a personalized way of doing your outreach, you're able to connect with more people and have meaningful conversations and hopefully find ways in which you can help each other.
Absolutely. And I think way more people are interested in speaking than not. And I'm obsessed with Clubhouse. I mention it almost every episode, but that space is an example of just the proof point that people are interested in meeting and learning and speaking. And, whether or not, no matter what platform you decide to use for it, the evidence is there. Like, this is what fuels us. And, we need to be doing it intentionally. I wanted to mention from that reference to Clubhouse, something someone did with me recently that was a really pro help moment. Someone reached out, asked me a very specific question about how I did a certain thing, and then said, could you start a room on that to answer my questions and maybe help some other people? And I was like, oh, you're a pro at this, because immediate benefit to me. It's not just sharing with you, it's sharing with, whoever decides to pop in. So I thought that was brilliant. And I'm excited that there's so many tools emerging for us to kind of have these conversations in different ways. I don't see you on there often, Sam. I need to start? I guess you're way too organized to waste time on Clubhouse, but
I actually need to get better about Clubhouse. I've definitely been on a couple of times, but I think you're one of those people that I look to for advice on that front, because you've had so many from the conversations that we've had, really organic meets and conversations, and then collaborations with Guy Kawasaki down to hundreds of other people, thousands of people that are in your rooms. I think that's an incredible outlet that I've not probably utilized enough. I'd say the one other thing I'd say in relation to these conversations is this concept of reverse mentoring, right? So Shannon Stubo, former CMO at LinkedIn, somebody who I was fortunate enough to get great advice from when I was building WeWork's growth organization, said to me, don't just be looking for mentors that can help you. Be open and recognize that those mentors are learning just as much from you. And I said, by God, you are right. Right. So at WeWork, I had, I would say that I had every year about 100 mentees That meant that I was meeting with, about 100 people at least 3 times a year to get to know them.
Wow.
and where they wanted to go professionally. But I'll tell you, those conversations taught me as much, if not more, about our front line. They taught me as much, if not more, about what motivated our employees. They taught me as much, if not more, about the hot button issues in the organization that we needed to address. So while I was definitely there in service of them, by God, I learned so much. And know that in every conversation that you have, even if it's that cold outreach, there's a lot that you can bring to the table, and people enjoy telling your story. So don't think it's a waste of their time.
Absolutely. I mean, and I love that as a nod to what you mentioned before about the 80% of the game is your mindset. Do you believe you have something worth someone else's time? And if you just start to really believe that, it comes to life organically. I cannot believe we only have 5 more minutes, Sam. This has been so amazing. I'm learning so much. I know everybody watching is too. This is so exciting. I want to, for the last question, take us back into sort of the vibe of Women's History Month, Equal Pay Day. I know over the years we've discussed the impact that even your own mother has had on you and really creating compelling leadership examples. So let's talk about that for a second. What are some of the specific ways you've observed women in your life or that you've worked with navigate gender bias in the workplace and sort of continue to ascend in spite of a lot of the things that we're facing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I liked your point at the top of our conversation. I think when it comes to navigating gender bias, I've seen amazing examples. My mom, being front and center, front and stage, of women empowering women, right? So she, throughout her career, always had mentees and then many mentees. She was, her last really big job was Secretary of the Air Force under President Obama, where, one of
no
her—
big deal.
No big deal, right? But she was an incredible, she still has an incredible career, but she, has had a really full career of public service and as well as private sector and nonprofit work. But one of her first priority initiatives was tackling sexual harassment in the Air Force, which was a real problem at the time, and which is not something that's gone away, but something that she, as a woman and as the CEO of the Air Force, wanted to make a top initiative and really highlight for men and women to solve together. I think he was a big mentor, remains a big mentor to men and women, but has always looked to pull others up and make sure that they had the safe space to ask the tough questions, get the feedback, and then hold themselves accountable as they were building to that bigger vision. So I think she's taught me a great deal about what it means to talk the talk and to be a woman who's empowering other women. I think being an ally, right? As somebody who's built teams, I hired 400 people at WeWork. I was always looking to hire, promote, and to create opportunity for a diverse team, right? Whether it was at the top or middle or bottom of the organization, and make sure that our teams reflected our company and that reflected the community that we're building, right, in our spaces and then the world, right? So I think being an ally as a white male is my responsibility, is everybody's responsibility. Last but not least, I'd say, the IndeCollective experience has been eye-opening, right? And it's been about community, right? Independence doesn't come at the cost of community. And one thing that I did observe, and I think that holds true in data, right? If you look at Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, right? Her book Lean In, she has a great amount of data in that book that McKinsey spun up around, disparity in pay and unfortunately people not knowing their worth, right? Not asking for what they're worth. And it was pretty incredible to see in action how when people get open, right? Here is what I'm making, right? Is this the right way to contract and price? Here is how I've been presenting myself to clients. Is this the best way to do that? Or are there ways that I can, improve upon what I'm doing? People get really transparent, men and women, but women especially, because unfortunately, as the data says, they sometimes start from a behind foot, end up making huge strides, right? I saw some of the women that graduated from our fall cohort, really smart, incredibly talented, high performers, right? Former VPs and executives at public private companies doubling their income, right? Not
I
because
love it. Yes.
of work, but because they were fine-tuning the way they were branding themselves, productizing themselves, and importantly, pitching and closing business, right? Asking for what they were, so pricing and contracting on premium terms. So that's not the whole of what this program is about, but I think being transparent, right? And being able to know your number and ask for it makes all the difference.
Absolutely, Sam. And what I love about what you just shared is that one of the ways that you can navigate your own challenges, like your mom did, is to start helping others solve theirs. Like you can find a solution by being the solution. And then like you're talking about, knowing your worth and asking for your worth. This is so key. We're going to have to come back and have a discussion just about that one, because one of the revelations I've had recently is that for women and anybody listening who might, this might resonate with you, it's not just about what you think you're worth today. It's about, as Sam said, understanding and benchmarking to align your worth with the willingness to pay for what it is that you do. And I think we get so stuck in the like, well, I have enough. And like, yeah, I'm getting what I'm worth because this is enough. No, it's like, what is the upper band of what, the market value is for what you do? And that's your worth, not how it feels. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. Sam, it is always such a pleasure. Any last thoughts? Anything you'd like to leave us with? Where should people go to get in touch and learn more about IndeCollective?
Absolutely. Well, last thought. I love the name of your show, Ascend, right? That's what we can all be about. I think life is a rising arc of abundance. I really do. We always can find ourselves in challenging moments, and we can always, find ourselves tackling problems. But I think when we have the right psychology, when we, really take advantage of the amazing community that we have around us and that we can build around us, we can tackle anything. When it comes to IndeCollective, check us out. We're at www.IndeCollective.co. So check us out. Awesome. And if you're interested in the spring cohort, feel free to drop in an application.
Yay! We will drop a link to IndeCollective in the chat so everyone can see it as people watch the replay here. And just Sam, thank you so much. I can't wait to get started. This has been the year where I've really started investing in coaching and programs and intentional community. And yours is going to be an awesome next step in that journey. I can't wait. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you. Everyone follow Sam on LinkedIn. He's amazing. You're welcome. And we will talk again soon. Everyone, thank you for joining this week's Ascend Live. We'll be back next week with another exciting guest. Really appreciate your time. And again, Sam, appreciate you so much. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.